Well, hello and welcome to Palabra Reclaimed. I'm Saida Pagan, and today we are in conversation with Representative Joaquin Castro of Texas, who is going to be talking to us about the latest General Accountability Office study on Latino underrepresentation in the media. Welcome to our program.
Good to be with you.
What, in your opinion, Congressman, is the biggest takeaway from part 2 of the GAO study?
Well, it is over about a 10-year time period, the stunning lack of progress for Latinos and Latinas across the media industry, for everything from hard news to publishing to Hollywood and entertainment. And the fact that the numbers have barely moved an inch. They've gone up about 1 percentage point. But aside from that, it's also some recommendations about what the federal government can do to be more effective in making sure that the industry is not discriminating, is being fair and giving equal opportunity to Latinos and to everyone else.
Yes, you have compared the repeated negative portrayal of Latinos in the media to political attack ads. Why do you believe that that is true?
Well, so we're in campaign season right now, and in Texas, I'm in San Antonio, and there are some very hotly contested races. And so anybody that's been in a congressional district or state around the presidential elections, around the midterms, you know that candidates will tend to run the same negative ad or two over and over and over and over, because they're trying to sear an impression in the minds of voters about a particular candidate, for example. And I make that analogy that the stereotypes that have come out of Hollywood that have disproportionately represented the reflection of Latinos on screen, both in film and television and streaming, the decades-long, intergenerational-long negativity that's come out of Hollywood, to me, is like a long-running political ad, a negative ad, that leaves an impression on the viewers over time. And I certainly think, while we're talking about two different fields, obviously politics and then just general consumption of news or entertainment, I think there's an analogy there.
Absolutely. One of the findings of the report has to do with lack of data sharing between the EEOC and the FCC. Could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, receives from employers, corporations, for example, data about when they've been sued or when there's been a complaint filed for discrimination. And so they have not, since November of 2020, they've not been sharing that information with the FCC. The FCC is a federal regulatory agency that polices broadcasters and cable companies and others, for example. And so the report gives some very specific substantive suggestions for how you could have a better anti-discrimination enforcement by the federal government. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be reaching out to the EEOC and the FCC and encouraging them to work together. And in fact, my office is sending a letter out to both of those agencies today, asking them to act upon the GAO's report.
What are some of the other findings that the report has revealed that attribute to the lack of Latinos in the entertainment industry? I know I attended, as I mentioned, the press conference this morning, and you mentioned unpaid internships and the issues of economics of people staying in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, there are some real financial barriers for everybody, but because there's an intersection between race and ethnicity and class, in other words, you have a lot of Latino Americans who don't come from families that can financially float them while they take on unpaid internships. There are financial barriers within the media industry that make it tough for people to be able to afford to even get their foot in the door. So there's a lot of work to do in getting media companies to do away with unpaid internships and actually start paying their interns. And while some companies have in fact done that, it's not a universal practice throughout the industry. So there's work to do there. But then also the report noted that there's a especially pernicious exclusion of Latinas, even more than Latinos, than Latino males. And so yeah, that's something that was very eye-opening as well, is that in many, across some media platforms, you've got this even bigger problem of underrepresentation of Latinas.
What role does, in your opinion, the media mergers play in all of this? There have been some recent mergers that have been of concern for many Latino advocates.
Well, if you think about it, when you have two companies that merge, you go from two possible avenues for somebody to go to work as a sales associate or producer or whatever it may be, and as a content creator, for them to be able to sell their content now from two companies, it goes down to one. The company also becomes this larger behemoth usually. And so the doors or the gates to get in become tougher to pry open for a lot of people, and especially for folks that have been historically excluded from the industry. And so over the last year and a half or so, we've been doing a lot of work in terms of watching these corporate mergers. Warner Brothers and Discovery recently merged, and we saw some of the negative effects, have seen some of the negative effects of that corporate merger on the Latino community and on Latino content creators. There are likely over the next few years other mergers that may be on the horizon. And so I'm working with the DOJ, the Federal Trade Commission, the FCC, to prod them to really consider the effect on the Latino community of content creators, of employees and others as a result of these mergers.
Two final questions. Have you been meeting more recently with studio executives or hearing from them or seeing any signs that they may be more sensitive to the issue than in the past?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting. I mentioned in my remarks that I've met with about a dozen major media companies, and that's actually a conservative estimate. It's probably closer to 20 or even more by now over the last few years. And it's clear now, after working on this for 3 years, pretty hard and in earnest, that there are some companies I think that are trying harder than others. There are some CEOs and executives at companies that take Latino inclusion more seriously than others do, and now are developing a track record of actually putting action behind their words. And I've continued to meet with folks across every kind of media platform. I just met earlier in the week or last week with folks from Paramount, for example, that own CBS. I met not too long ago with the president of CAA that just acquired another talent agency, ICM, and have met with, on the publishing side, more recently with Penguin Random House as it's preparing to try to finalize its merger with Simon & Schuster. And so we're continuing to meet in a coalition with others to try to press the industry to change for the better.
And are you hopeful?
I am actually. I'm hopeful, first of all, because I think the floor is so low that it's hard to get worse. But because we've never seen, I think, a sustained effort that involves a coalition of people in government, in federal government, in state legislatures in different parts of the country, and advocates inside and outside the industry. We haven't seen this kind of coalition come together on behalf of the Latino community, I think, ever before. That's not to take away from any of the work that's been done before, but I'm saying I think a new piece of this is that you finally got the government fully involved in actually looking at the industry as it relates to Latino representation.
And why should we all care about this?
Well, first, I mean, Latinos make up almost 20% of the country. And so it hurts the entire country for such a large segment of the American population and community to be sidelined from a major industry that is still the main image defining and narrative creating institution in the United States of America. That not only affects Latinos and Latinas, it really is damaging, I think, to American society and American culture generally.
Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts on part 2 of the GAO report.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Palabra Reclaimed. I'm Saida Pagan.